What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys all had a fantastic weekend. And I am going on vacation this week. So from June 23rd to June 30th, all those videos you're going to see are going to be pre-recorded. So if I miss information in there or there's something new that's changed, hey, don't be too hard on me. I've pre-recorded all of them so you guys have stuff to watch while I am in Key West. And with that out of the way, we're going to continue with our 2021 team preview predictions, and we're going to start off with the Indiana Hoosiers this week. So, hey, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell. Sorry, I hit my mic. Keep it PG in the comment section. If you'd like to leave a comment, share the video as well. Just do anything you can to help out the channel. It really does mean a lot to me. Let's go ahead and talk about Indiana in 2021. And this is a team that in 2020 was a big surprise. And I don't know if a lot of people were expecting this surprise. I don't think a whole lot of people were expecting the surprise. I sure wasn't. I thought Indiana was going to be a solid team, and I thought they were still being overlooked as a team that could string together a decent season. But I did not expect Indiana to string together a season like they did last year. And I think it could only get better in 2021. Now, they have a difficult schedule, which I will show you here in a little bit. But as far as what Indiana is losing and returning, there are a couple question marks that I have for Indiana. But overall, I think this is still going to be a very, very solid team. And I don't think you should be too worried if you are an Indiana fan. You should have a pretty good season. So let's look at what they lost. The big question that I had is who's going to replace Stevie Scott at running back? That was the big question for me. They did get a guy from the transfer portal that I will show you here in a little bit. But they also lost some weapons at wide receiver. Watt Fillier and Rashawn Williams are both gone. And Watt Fillier, of course, is a huge loss. Rashawn Williams, not as big of a loss, but a loss it is nonetheless. Harry Kreider gone off the offensive line. They're going to have to fill in a spot for him, but I think the Hoosiers offensive line should look just fine this year. And in the defense last year, that, in my opinion, was the most underrated in the nation. This defense was so good last year. Jerome Johnson, Jovan Swan, and Tremar Reese are gone off the defensive line, and Jamar Johnson is gone off the defensive backing group. So this is still going to be a really solid defense, but I did have a question about the defensive line. Are the guys going to be able to step up on the defensive line like so many guys stepped up last year for Indiana? And this team, in my opinion, was some big winners in the transfer portal that we'll look at here in a little bit. But the two biggest questions I had that we're going to see if they're going to be answered this season: can they replace Stevie Scott, and can the defensive line, and especially the defensive front seven, replace lost talent and take that next step this year? I'm not saying they were bad last year. It's just, can they improve on what they did last year? And it's not about what you lost. It's about what you have, as the old saying goes. And, well, Michael Penix could be a Heisman candidate quarterback this year. I've heard a lot of people saying if you got lucky last year, your luck has to run out eventually. I don't think that was the case. While there were some throws, especially thrown to a guy by the name of Ty Freifogel, who was absolutely fantastic last year, 2 straight 200-yard games. He's going to be paired up with DJ Matthews at wide receiver as well. But for Michael Penix, I think he's going to be a fantastic quarterback this year. There's going to be no question about that, in my mind at least. And the running back they're getting from the transfer portal goes by the name of Stephen Carr. He is a transfer from USC, and he should fit right in as that #1 running back for Indiana. Can he replace Stevie Scott? Well, was kind of considered a 1A, 1B with players over there at USC. Hey, that rhymed. Good on me. But no, I think Stephen Carr should fit in very well with this Indiana team. Should be able to fit in nicely for Stevie Scott. Also, tight end Peyton Hendershot is coming back, so Michael Penix has a lot of pass catchers out there that he can throw to. As far as the defensive line goes, they did pick up Ryder Anderson, a transfer from Ole Miss, and I think he should fit in really well on this defensive line. You also have Michael McFadden back there at linebacker, and a lot of guys back there in the defensive back position, and cornerbacks and safeties. Jalen Williams, Devon Matthews, and Tywan Mullen. Tywan Mullen, especially the name that you want to watch this year. He was pretty darn good last year. In my opinion, their best defender arguably is Micah McFadden. Should lead this defense to be pretty good this season. That said, Ryder Anderson, along with other guys on the defensive line, can step it up. Here's the first look at Indiana's schedule. Hey, they were 6-2 last year, 6-1 in the Big Ten, second in the Big Ten East, only behind the Ohio State Buckeyes. And they did lose the Outback Bowl to the Ole Miss Rebels, the guy that they just got Ryder Anderson from. Excuse me, the team they just got Ryder Anderson from. Hey, I'm going to talk about some games more than others. They're just more interesting matchups to me. Green is a win, red is a loss. You guys know how this works if you've watched any other of my videos, if you know how. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at Indiana's 2021 schedule. And they open up with a tricky one. It's on the road against Iowa. Now, Iowa this year is losing a lot of talent on the lines. The offensive line is losing, I believe, 3 or 4 starters, and the defensive line is losing some nice pieces as well. Not to mention the offense around Spencer Petras is, in my opinion, going to be looking to fill some holes this year. Amir Smith-Marset is gone, as well as Mekhi Sargent. So some big losses there for Iowa on the offensive side. On the defensive side, you're losing some really talented players in the defensive front seven. Iowa, I don't know if they're going to be ready to play straight out of the gate week 1. I think that Indiana goes ahead and gets this win. I think Indiana's going to be the better team out of the gate. I think Indiana's got more questions answered, especially with the big wins they had in the transfer portal. For the Iowa Hawkeyes, it's going to be a struggle to start the season. They got some difficult games, but you can never count Iowa out at home. I could absolutely see Iowa winning this game if they can get stuff figured out. They got a lot of time to figure it out up until that point, but as far as right now goes, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Indiana Hoosiers to win that game. I'm also picking Indiana to beat Idaho. They should have no problem there with the Vandals before the big game against Cincinnati. And this is going to be an exciting matchup. In Bloomington, the house is going to be rocking for sure. This Indiana fan base should be as loud as they've ever been, because this could potentially be the best team that they possibly have ever had. They're at Indiana. Now there have been a couple good teams at Indiana, but Indiana not really known for their football. This could be a very, very impressive season for Indiana, but it also could be an impressive season for Cincinnati. Cincinnati is coming out this year, and they feel like they have something to prove after being dropped in the rankings last year, and then even missing out on the college football playoff. Cincinnati is going to feel left out, and they're going to have something to prove this year. And this is going to be a very talented Cincinnati team. They have a very good defense with head coach Luke Fickell being an old defensive coordinator from the Ohio State University. He was their old defensive coordinator, even took in as interim head coach in 2011 when Tressel had to sit down and they didn't have a head coach. That was the bad season that Ohio State had. Regardless, I'm going off on a tangent. This defense should be absolutely fantastic for Cincinnati this year, as well as should their offense. This has the potential to be a shootout game, and it's going to be one of those factors of which defense plays better. And in my opinion, Cincinnati's defense is just better. And for that reason, I'm picking Cincinnati to win the game. If you want to pick Indiana to win the game, go ahead. I'm not going to argue with you. I just think Cincinnati's defense is better, and I think Cincinnati is going to have something to prove this year. I like the Bearcats to win this game. Indiana should rebound nicely, though, against Western Kentucky. It is a road game, and Western Kentucky is a team that usually is pretty competitive. They're usually a solid team, but I think Indiana is just way too talented. They should be able to get that win against the Hilltoppers. And then they get into true Big Ten play. So after that week 1 game against Iowa, they got a couple weeks off from Big Ten play, and their first game back is another road game. And it's going to be against the Penn State Nittany Lions. And this is going to be a hard game to win. Playing in Happy Valley, this is probably going to be the whiteout game as Penn State has to play Ohio State on the road this year. This is probably going to be the whiteout game for Penn State. It's going to be a rocking house. It's going to be electric, and Penn State's going to be a lot better than they were last year. I'm picking the Penn State Nittany Lions to win this game. I think Penn State is going to cause havoc on offense. I think this is still a really talented offense. Of course, Sean Clifford coming back. They have a lot of nice pieces at wide receiver, such as Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington. And they're also bringing in John Lovett from Baylor to fit in with that running back position, which was the position that struggled for Penn State last year. They're losing a lot of talent on defense, but I think by this point in the season, they've got those holes figured out. Penn State, I think, is going to pick up the win here in Happy Valley against the Indiana Hoosiers. And then Indiana has their bye week. There's a better place for a bye week, and it's going to come a week later before the big game. But regardless, They should pick up an easy win right off their bye week. Mel Tucker, I just think we got to give him some more time. He has not proven himself to be a head coach anywhere. Still hasn't proven himself to be a head coach. It was a bad season for Michigan State last year. And I've heard some people say Michigan State is underrated. Oh, you're overlooking Michigan State. Until Mel Tucker can prove to me that he's a proven head coach, I'm going to continue to overlook the Michigan State Spartans. Indiana should get an easy win in that one. And then comes the big game, the game that everyone's looking forward to in the Big Ten, and possibly the most important game in the Big Ten, of course, besides the Big Ten championship game, depending on who plays and what their records are, what the stakes are, whatever, going off on a tangent again. This is going to be the game of the year in the Big Ten regular season. Ohio State versus Indiana. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And as an Ohio State fan, I'll tell you, I'm nervous about this game. Indiana was really good last year. Ohio State got up 35-7, and Indiana came back and almost won the game. They had a chance to tie it. They had a chance to force overtime in the horseshoe, just couldn't quite get it done. And I think that Indiana is going to look to end what is currently the longest losing streak in team history against this Ohio State Buckeyes team. I believe they've lost something like 25 or 26 straight to the Buckeyes, and I think they're going to look to change that this year. And Indiana's got the talent to do so, playing at home. This is going to be a hard test for the Buckeyes. And how will the Buckeyes quarterback play? Well, it's going to be C.J. Stroud, Jack Miller, or Kyle McCord. Probably going to end up being Stroud. And he has the best group of wide receivers around him. And that is no question. Ohio State has the best group of wide receivers in the entire nation. But when you look at other positions for Ohio State, the running back position should be fine. The safeties are going to be young. How will the safeties play? The big question for me on defense for Ohio State is the linebacking position. They're going to have a lot of young players there. And I think by this point, they got a lot of stuff figured out. Ohio State's also going to have one of the best defensive lines in the nation. I just think Ohio State matches up with Indiana well. I am picking the Buckeyes to win this game. If you want to pick Indiana, go ahead. I am not going to argue with you. Well, I might argue with you out of my Ohio State fandom, but I'm not going to argue with you on why I think Indiana would win the game. I think Indiana could win this game. Sorry, guys, I just hit my mic. I think Indiana can win this game, absolutely. I just think that Ohio State's going to be a better team this year. And I think Ohio State is going, they might drop a game somewhere, and it happens to be here. This game is really 50-50 for me. I'm going to go with what I'm going to keep saying in my mind, and maybe a slight bias here, but I am picking the Buckeyes to beat the Indiana Hoosiers. Couple consecutive road games, and they're going to be tricky road games on the road against Maryland, Michigan. I'll kind of combine them here, dragging this video out a little too long. But this road game for Maryland, this road game against Maryland is going to be tricky. Maryland can pull off an upset this year with Taulia Tagovailoa at quarterback. This is going to be a tricky team to play in the Maryland Terrapins, but I think Indiana is going to be able to squeak this one out. I also think they're going to be able to squeak out a win against Michigan. Michigan is going to be a much improved team this year. We know that, but how good of a season is Michigan going to have? Well, Jim Harbaugh is going to be coaching for his job, it seems, this year. So Michigan, I could see them winning that one too. But I do have Indiana being able to beat Michigan in the Big House. A couple consecutive home games against Rutgers and Minnesota. And these two teams have similar stories. Both of these teams, I think, are on the rise. Now, Rutgers is expected to have a decent season this year, and Minnesota maybe not expected to have a decent season. But Rutgers should be a fairly solid team this year, maybe capable of pulling off an upset, but I think Rutgers is just a piece or two away from being able to pull off a big upset. And with this game being on the road in Bloomington, I don't see a way that Rutgers beats Indiana here. And it's the same story with Minnesota. Look, this Minnesota team is getting overlooked this year. I think Minnesota is capable of pulling off an upset. They're just going to have to do it on their own turf, and doing it in Bloomington is not going to be easy. So kind of the same story with Rutgers and Minnesota. Both of the teams capable of pulling off an upset, just not on another team's turf. I think Indiana wins both of those games. And then the rivalry game against Purdue, I think Indiana wins that as well. Purdue loses Rondale Moore this year. They will have Jack Plummer back at quarterback, but Purdue seems to mix quarterbacks around every year. At least they have for the past couple of years. And they still have a nice piece in David Bell. Lots of good running backs there as well. Xander Horvath, I believe, is coming back. But for Purdue, I just don't think this team is going to mesh quite well this year. And Jeff Brom is a coach on the hot seat. I think Indiana wins this game. And with that, you see 3 games highlighted in red, which means I have the Indiana Hoosiers going 9-3 in 2021. 11-1 for me is their best case scenario. This team is talented enough to do so. The main reason I have them going 9-3 is they possibly have the hardest road schedule in the Big Ten. On the road against Iowa week 1. That's going to be a hard game in and of itself. You can never count out Kirk Ferentz at home. On the road against Penn State. That's probably going to be the whiteout game. That's going to be a hard game to win. On the road against Maryland. Maryland's capable of pulling off an upset this year, and they're going to do it at least once this year, in my opinion. And on the road against Michigan. It's the Big House. It's the highest capacity stadium in the nation. That's going to be a hard place to win as well. So many tricky road games, and then just other tricky games in general. At home against Cincinnati, at home against Ohio State. This schedule is chocked full of places that Indiana could trip up, which is why I see their worst case scenario being 7-5. I mean, if they're just not up to playing this season, which I don't think is the case, 7-5 could be a possibility, and Indiana could be back to square one. But I think this Indiana team is going to do really well. There's just a lot of tricky games on the schedule, and I think this Indiana team is going to be a lot better than what their record says. That's going to do it for this video. Again, leave a like, hit subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, leave a comment down below. Just keep it PG. Next team we're going to be looking at is the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Can Louisiana find themselves in the New Year's Six Bowl? You're going to find out my thoughts on the Raging Cajuns tomorrow. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all of you guys tomorrow. Again, we'll talk about Louisiana. Goodbye.